Very much for coming and joining us at this last day of Startup Boston Week, 8th annual week this year. It's amazing. My name is Marita. I will be your host today, and thank you, Suffolk University Sawyer Business School, for hosting us. You know that Suffolk University hosts a lot of great opportunities for learning, both in and outside of these classrooms. And we really appreciate their partnership for the second year. They are hosting entirety of Startup Boston Week. The goal behind Startup Boston Week is to connect the entire Great Boston and New England startup community, all industries, all funding stages, all departments, and to bring them together to connect and learn from the industry leaders. The team that creates Startup Boston is all volunteer, and of course, thank you so much for being a part of this community. Thanks for coming. And now off you go.
Thank you so much. So welcome everybody in the room and online. For those of you who I haven't met, I'm Alistair Meffin. I am the VP of Customer Success at Florence Healthcare based in Atlanta. I've been in the customer success community now for about 15 years. And have had the pleasure of meeting our wonderful panelists. And I've implemented scaled, or we'll debate what the name is, scaled or TED Touch at multiple companies. So I'm really happy to be here, and we'll go down the line and do introductions. So start with Asha.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Asha May. I would add digital as another potential name that we can throw in there.
Yep.
So I am a customer growth consultant. I have been in the B2B tech space for a little over 20 years. The front end of my career was in marketing and been an individual contributor as well as a leader running all the different types of marketing programs. About 10 years ago, made an intentional pivot into customer success and into SaaS. And then for the last several years, have had the great fortune of combining both of those skill sets in scaled digital customer marketing advocacy to really augment what the traditional customer success function has been tasked with doing. And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Hey, I'm Erica. Nice to see all of you here. So I run a CX consultancy called Slice Advisory, where I focus on CX operations, enablement, and strategy. I've also, similar background to Asha, I've also been in B2B tech for about 20 years now. I've had a lot of different roles. I've been a director of demand gen, I've been a sales engineer, and for the last 10 years, I have been in CS and CX. I've been a VP of those functions as well. And because of that sort of varied background, especially combining the marketing aspects of my background with the sales and CS aspects of my background, I think that I'm really excited to be on this panel because I think that a lot of what we're going to talk about today is really the future of the function. And there are a lot of reasons why it's especially salient now. So good to be here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex. I am probably the least seasoned of the panel on here. I joined the customer success space a couple years ago, a little over 2 years ago. I'm actually a CPA. I went to school for accounting, started my career at PwC. But I think I'm just a little too social to be an accountant. And CS definitely my calling now. I'm head of customer success at Avise and was really very, very lucky to be able to combine my subject matter expertise with the product. It's an accounting software startup with my love for nurturing and fostering relationships with others. So like everyone's saying, I think CS is at a really crucial point where people are really open to adopting new technologies. And so I feel like coming in with a fresh mindset has been a strength for me. So I'm excited to give you my perspective.
Awesome. So we're going to first start with polling the audience. So 3 questions. First is we're going to talk about what stage your company is in right now. So who in the room is with seed, is in a seed round? Okay. Who in the room is Series A? B? and anybody C and any Series C plus. Okay, so interesting. And then in terms of roles, anybody in here in customer success? All right, so we got about a third. Great. Operations. Okay. And then last is executives and founders. Okay. All right. And then last question. How many people in this room, and maybe online, if we can get a look, believe they know what scaled digital or tech touch CS is? Okay. So about 5%. All right. And that's why you're here.
Taking a chance, I guess.
It's great. I love it. So you're really relying on us up here. Okay. So thanks for that. I really appreciate it. So we're gonna move into our first question. And for our first question, we want to talk about whether or not tech to digital, scaled, whatever you want to call it, is either a strategy, a function, or both. And I'm going to turn this over to Alex for our first comments.
Yeah. This question has been particularly top of mind for me recently. We met as panelists and moderator a few weeks ago to kind of brainstorm some of the questions that we wanted to bring. And so I've definitely, it's always on my mind, but particularly on my mind now. My answer, I feel like it's both. The minute you have your first customer and you decide how you're going to treat that customer, how you're going to retain that customer, everything like that, that's a strategy. You don't need a customer success function to develop a CS strategy. And that's kind of been pretty evident in how I think that's why customer success is such a broad kind of profession, and it's implemented so differently at all these different companies, because it does really start with what was the strategy from day one? Was it purposeful or not? And then when you get to be big enough and you want to implement that as a function, that's how I think it becomes known as a function, but really it should be a strategy first in my mind.
Asha?
So I'm going to expand a little bit, and I agree. I think that it is both strategy as well as function. And the reason why I think it's strategy, agreeing with what you just said, Alex, is that it's important to understand what all the touch points are that your customer has from the moment that contract activates. Now, you can argue that if you have a product-led growth motion, even before you've got a contract in place, there's probably some value there as well. But let's just start from when they become a customer. Understanding that it's not just sales and customer success that your customers are interacting with within your organization. They're talking to product, they're talking to accounting, they're talking to just they're talking to your executives. And so there needs to be a strategy that really defines that journey. And this is why I think mapping out a customer journey is so important at the front end. So that's why it should be a strategy. And the why it's also a function is I've seen different elements. It's not just one program that is digital or tech touch or scaled. It's different programs. And so you can't just expect those different programs to be the responsibility of different teams. In order to execute that correctly, I think it's valuable to have one oversight over those programs. So that's where I think it's also a function.
And I'll say too, just sort of building on what you're saying, Alex, that it's sort of a maturity model. If you're seed or even Series A, sometimes there's like a pre-strategy where it's just like, oh my God, we just got to figure out how to respond to questions and get the customer what they need. And so I don't, if you're really that early stage, like I don't want anyone to walk away feeling like, oh, you have to have this whole thing like planned out. Like it's very normal early stage to just trying to figure it out as you go. Like a lot of times, I'm sure founders will jump on calls a lot with customers as well. And so I think that's where you're kind of doing stuff before you have a solid strategy at first, and then you kind of figure. I mean, it's not necessarily ideal, but like that's the reality, right, of what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, 100%. I think so I also believe it's both. Not shocking. I think that strategy it does start, I agree 100% with Asha. It starts with the customer journey and understanding that. And then I haven't had the pleasure of working at a seed or Series A company. I'm sure that folks have. There are obviously some folks in this room, but usually I'm established. So now I'm in B and C. So it's interesting that the founders getting on the calls and making sure that all of their customers are happy. So it's not just digital that way. Awesome. So we are actually going to do questions along the way rather than waiting to the end so that people don't forget. So I'll open it up both online and to the audience if there are any questions.
So I understand it's like this looks good.
Oh yeah, because we have online. Yes.
Yeah, my name is Red. So I understand the CS is more a function and strategy what I use as trade. But how the work differs from the B2C market? This could be more for the B2B. But is there any feedback you can get if my product is more into B2C market?
Yeah, I mean, I would say with the B2C, you probably would even lean more heavily on a digital strategy, right? Just because you're like the amount of customers that you're going to have are like overwhelming, right? And so having those feedback loops, and whether that could be a simple form, right? It doesn't have to be, super complex to start. But certainly like that's something that you'll need to build from the beginning. If you are focusing on consumers, just because the volume is a lot higher than B2B typically.
I think the other thing that I would probably add to that is if you think about how just us as individuals, how our behavior as consumers has evolved just in our day-to-day. I often use the example, we rarely will book a hotel or a restaurant reservation without finding some information or, my blinds broke the other day. And so I went on to Home Depot to look up the level or used stocks. So there's a lot more of our own personal behavior that has been developed over time to self-serve. And so if you're B2C, and I would extend that now to B2B as well, because I do think that behavior has moved over to B2B quite a bit, but especially in B2C, the self-service element. So the thing I would keep in mind, even at the earlier stage, is to make sure your documentation of how to use your product it's not an afterthought, that you should be paying attention to that and investing in that as well. Because that's part of, I believe, that's part of this tech touch scale digital
100%.
Great point.
element. Yeah.
That's a great point.
So more like a more continuous feedback mechanism, whatever way we try to.
You're going to need that for sure.
Shall we?
All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions in the room?
Oh.
So hearing y'all say,
I don't know if it's on.
stand up and talk. Hearing y'all say both, you might be going into this both being a function. I'm always curious to learn more about the structure of that function, given the overlap between traditional success, as you mentioned, and marketing. Talk about how you typically see that structure, that function structure, but we're specifically talking about tech touch.
Yep.
Addressing that in the future?
We don't have a specific question on it, but we know that was one of the things. So let's do it. Let's go down this this wonderful rabbit hole.
You want to go first?
I can go first. I think it's going to vary very wildly. I don't think there's like a right answer. I can speak for how it's structured at Avise currently. CS, especially Avise being an early stage startup, CS is involved in kind of everything, is involved in every conversation, just because our main goal with CS at Avise is to make sure that we're expanding and retaining our customers. And so that also comes with the feedback loop of communication with the customer, what they want to see out of the product, and then kind of coming back. And that also informs what we're saying is sticking in the market for sales. So there's a lot of overlap there. I would say you don't even necessarily need like a head of function. I know I am a head of function, but like you don't necessarily need it. Elias, please don't fire me. But the whole, I think, reason why we're saying it's both is because you can have a person at a startup that is doing the CS function, but is more so kind of like widespread doing all the things along the customer journey. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'll make an argument for marketing owning this, and then I'll counteract that and make an argument for CS very briefly owning it. So arguments for marketing owning it. First of all, like they oftentimes they own the systems that you need for scaled CS, digital CS. So your CRM, your marketing automation tools, maybe sometimes product has more ownership over like the in-product messaging. Sometimes that's marketing. They're used to communicating. They have a lot of templatized messaging right at their fingertips. They probably have more budget for something like this because having a communications role in CS is still kind of weird for a lot of organizations. Some of the reasons why it should be on the CS side. So CS folks really sit at a convergence of 3 different pieces of information that I think are unique to the function, or should be. One is domain expertise. Now, this is a great example of that. The other is understanding your customer. And the last piece is understanding the product. So I'll say I was a marketer, so please take that. Marketing people really don't know how the product works very well, usually, right? And so when you're talking about digital CS and you're trying to drive specific actions within the product, a lot of times, in my experience, what you get from the marketing team is that like, doesn't really work that way. and like this stuff is going out to customers. They're like, ooh, that's not great. And so I also think there's a big difference between marketing types of communication and CS types of communication, even within this digital CS realm. Marketers typically, right, are all about conversion, right? Even if they're customer marketers, see, like inherent within a marketing organization is driving a customer towards an end that they want you to do, right? Whereas on the CS side, our perspective is slightly different in that we're trying to help customers do what they want to do. And those differences, I feel, often come out not just in the content, but also the tone. So
For sure.
Yeah, value attainment being a big one for customer success.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that what Erica just mentioned and also Alex is spot on. I will also say that I've sat in both marketing, reporting into the CMO, and I've sat in customer success in this function, reporting into the chief customer officer. And some of it also does come to those leaders of the teams. What are they being goaled on? And oftentimes marketing, the head of marketing is being goaled on new business. And in that case, this function really should be in customer success. So I would agree with the tools piece, but there are so many more new tools on the market and available now that CS, hence CS Ops, is now becoming an even bigger part of the organization. But I do think that understanding how the leaders of each of those teams are goaled is a very important factor to consider as well. And I really want to underscore the tone that you just mentioned, Erica, because it's very easy for a lot of organizations with the effort that goes into building out product awareness campaigns that are meant for prospects, that are meant for new business, to simply say, oh, we'll just throw customers in there as well. It's fine. And that is an enormous mistake, in my opinion. And tone is so important. And what it comes down to is it communicates to your customer, your existing customer, that you actually don't know them because they read that. So that's definitely something important to consider.
For sure.
And we are going down a rabbit hole, aren't we?
Yeah, well, I knew we would.
It's a good one.
Because this is, we've got some strong feelings on this. So I've only been in customer success. So I've never been on the marketing side. I believe it lives in customer success with a marketer. So I have filled, I'm actually in the process. I said when I started my next company, the first role I was going to fill is CS Ops, and that's what I'm doing. And she's coming over from marketing. So and now she's got to learn CS and understand our workflows, but she's super smart and she already knows all the marketing lingo and how to do it. So the other thing I would mention, because this bit me at my last company, is when you do your digital scaled CS, you call it programs. Don't call it campaigns, because campaigns is a marketing term. It is very ingrained there. So as you're driving the value of a digital or scaled program, language matters, right? Because your CEOs, a lot of CEOs out there don't even know what customer success is, never mind digital or scaled CS.
And I like that differentiation too, because it implies the existence of an ongoing relationship versus like a time-bound start and stop thing.
100%.
Totally.
Yeah. Awesome. Do we have any questions, any more questions or online? Oh,
Hey there, I'm JP. Do you have any specifics around the tools you use for a scaled approach or the methodologies, processes that you would follow?
Yeah. So we will definitely touch on that.
Yeah.
For 100%. I saw another hand raised over here.
It's okay. I'm fine to listen to that.
Okay, you want that. Okay, that's fine. Okay. All right, awesome. So we sort of talked about where this should live. We have actually touched a little bit on why you should care, but I really want to talk about this because I think it's really important that especially executives, founders understand why it is so important to be thinking about this. So I'm going to start with Erica and give us why we care.
1, 2. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. So I think there's a couple of really obvious reasons and a couple of non-obvious reasons. So the first obvious reason is that it's efficient, right? Doing things at scale, right, is going to be more efficient than using a one-to-one approach for all of your customer accounts, right? And this is important, right? Because especially in today's tech landscape, we need to be really conscious of our spend. And so if we're not solving every problem with people, executives like that, CEOs like that, so it's a good way to approach at least a portion of your customer base, right? The other thing that it does, right? If you think about say a digital onboarding, right? Where a customer is maybe receiving emails, maybe they're receiving in-product messaging. It's efficient in that you can actually prevent problems before they happen, right? So if a customer is in a tool and they're trying to figure out, how do I set this up or how do I do this next step? You can catch them in the moment, right? And so even before they make a mistake and have to then talk to support. So in a way, you're anticipating a lot of those customer needs. It can be efficient in that you're using, another way to think of scaled CS is using like templatized comms. So if you use a sales tool, someone had asked questions about, what kind of tools that they use. My team in the past has used a tool called Mixmax. SalesLoft is another one. Outreach is another one where you're templatizing comms and not necessarily, you're not necessarily sending out the same information to every customer, but you're essentially getting a head start and then you're customizing certain pieces of that information. So it's efficient even if you're using scaled CS methodologies within a one-to-one context. It's efficient there. And it's also asynchronous as well. The non-obvious part of why this is important, this might be a little controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think a lot of people think of digital CS or scaled CS and think that, okay, well, we'll do this because, we want to address like a lower segment of our customer base, but like the customer experience isn't that great. But we can do that because that's a lower, section.
Churn volume. Anyway,
right. Exactly. But I would say that a well-designed customer experience, regardless of how it happens, whether that's digitally, whether that's one-on-one, is a great moment, is a positive experience for your customers. So, I think that there's a lot of strategies here that can also apply to large enterprise customers. So for example, right, if you're a customer, you have a question, imagine if you have a great knowledge base or way to surface that information from a great knowledge base like Ash was talking about. Like one of the foundational steps, right, is to get all of your documentation and all of your knowledge base in order so that you can pull on that. Like that's a great moment for the customer because they don't have to stop their workflow, contact support or contact their CSM and figure out how to do it. They can just keep going when they're in the moment in that flow. And as we know, once a customer gets out of the product, it is so hard to get them to re-engage, right? And so that's a really positive moment. If in some ways it can feel almost invisible, right? If the customer experience is really good, if they don't have to stop and like ask a question, if they're just flowing either within the product or getting stuff together to be able to implement within your product, your whole product in your company is going to feel organized. There'll be a sense of order. And if it's just easy, that is at least 50% of the game, if not more than that. Yeah. And I'll also say too, that if you can pull this off, right? If you can have your communications and your in-product messaging and the way that your product works, it's kind of a proxy for how well your entire company is organized, because it can take, as you know, a lot of orchestration to get that all going at once. So in some ways, I think there's two sides of that. It's either a proxy for how well that's going, or it's a forcing function to make it happen.
Yeah, for sure. Alex.
I was going to say, from my perspective, scaled CS matters when you have limited people to do the work as well. It's kind of a like workforce multiplier in a way. So not only all those things where you're working cross-functionally and you're building out programs and everything like that, but really, really early on, it's important to lean on the tools that are available to you so that you can do more with less. And that goes a very long way in proving the value of your department to your executives is being able to stretch what you can do, just as a team of one, as a team of two, whatever it might be. So that's why it matters to me, I think, first and foremost. And then obviously, as you mature as a company, all the other things kind of pile on, and that's why it matters even more.
I think what I would add to what both of you have said is a bit adjacent in that the role of customer success is evolving and continues to evolve and change. And I think how the market has changed has influenced that, given that there have been so many layoffs. Money is no longer cheap. Bodies are expensive. And doing more with less, as you mentioned, has dictated why customer success is evolving. The other piece is that early on, I think when customer success was really just sort of forming and developing, it really became this team that I call it this no-look pass over the wall that sales would do. Like they'd land the customer, contract would be signed, and then they go, okay, here you go. Don't screw it up. And everything from onboarding, adoption, any question just fell on the laps of the customer success manager. And that is not scalable. And I think efficiency is a big part of it. And a program like Scale Digital Tech Touch is ultimately going to help the CSM be a lot more efficient so that they can do more when they're engaging with your customer, so that they can get to more of that strategic conversation. If anybody was in the talk earlier this morning about who owns expansion, oh, you missed that one, I gather.
I missed it. Oh my God.
So we had both CS and sales represented on the panel, and the idea of account management came up. And I thought, what I was thinking about at that time in relation to this conversation is what Scale Digital Tech Touch allows for is it allows for the CSM to be a lot more effective in their time with the customer. And so maybe you don't need to bring in this other function of account management. I think some of the conversation and the responses to that in this morning's session was, oh, you can add this other function. I would almost argue, let's pivot on that and let's make the CSM a lot more effective by leveraging tools, leveraging processes, so that a lot of the tactical stuff that doesn't need to be handheld can be addressed. And now you're elevating the CSM in terms of their value. And for those of us in CS, we all know that it's becoming increasingly more important that customer success needs to prove its own ROI. I know we're getting to that.
Yeah, don't worry.
In the organization.
Yep.
Oh, and sorry, the one other point in terms of why you should care goes back to what I was saying earlier to the gentleman's question, that our own behavior as consumers has moved over into the B2B space. So even in our work life, self-service has become more important. And then I think where your product has global reach, a great example from when I was in customer success, it was with a cybersecurity organization. We had, and community was under my watch. We had a user from a global company, a customer sitting in China, who was informed that they needed to do X and they needed to use our product to do X, but they weren't given any other direction. They didn't know who to contact. They were able to Google and find our community.
Oh, nice.
And came in through that way. And this was an enterprise customer. So it's also valuable for that global reach for your enterprise customers as well, to give that self-service capability.
Are Jay and Jeff like paying you behind the scene?
No.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, so we can, question in the back. Sorry, I didn't mean to point either.
Hi, my name's Susan. I'm in marketing. I'm thinking about pivoting to CS.
Come on over.
Yeah, it's beautiful over here. Yeah.
But I'm just given the nature of the work itself, I'm very curious to hear you talk about AI and how you're integrating AI.
I'll be happy to take that question.
Because it's a very unusual span that you cover. So I'm just curious about that.
So there's people in this room that know I have some really strong feelings on this. So 100%. I mean, I'm actually in the process at my new company of picking both a CS platform and identifying a conversational AI tool. I'll be implementing a AI chatbot through our support center. AI, if anybody was at Churn Zero, I debated whether or not AI was going to take over half of CSM by 2030, and I was on the yes side. So it's all about efficiency. I absolutely need to get my CSMs to be as efficient as humanly possible, and AI is the way to go. AI will never replace a CSM. That I can guarantee. You still need the human touch. You still need that creative thinking. AI is not there. Maybe in 200 years, Cybernet kicks in and we're all in a mess. But right now, it's not there. So I would strongly, as you're thinking about your digital, and we're going to get into technology, so I don't want to go way down this rabbit hole, but really be thinking about AI tools, not just the tools that your CSMs are going to leverage, but how do you bring AI into that mix?
And I would say too, when you're considering different AI tools, the things that, I mean, an AI means there's so many different things that it means. So it's just like kind of even a misnomer to say AI tools is just products and solutions. But I think the things that align nicely and can help with efficiency, with working with what you have, are things that is, to me, it's a difference between like, is the data structured or is it unstructured? Right? Is something a yes, no answer? Is something, easily mappable, right? Or is something more of an interpretation? And that's where you still need humans. Like even from a support perspective, right? I find that there's a lot of claims right now that like, oh, the support teams are immediately being replaced by AI. And I don't find that to be true, especially in B2B, because I think that the secret power of folks in support, and the same is true of CS, is understanding intent. And AI is getting a little better at that when you think about it in the context of chatbots, but especially with B2B, they're just not there yet.
They're not there.
Right. And so that's what I would consider more unstructured data. And that's what you need a human for. So if you're, and Alistair, you've done this, a lot, but if you're thinking about how to structure that within, say, a support organization, a first level, using a chatbot to deflect low level, yes, no.
20% of your tickets, 30% of your
Sure.
tickets. Yep.
But that still means that 70 to 80% still need a human to figure out what the heck did that customer mean when they
Totally.
say that? Oh, they're using their own language. They're not necessarily using the language that the way that you think about it or that's in your docs either.
Yeah. The natural language is getting better, but it's 100% not there yet. So go ahead. Alex, I think you were going to.
I want to save part of my answer for when we talk about the tools, but I was going to
We're
say,
there.
I was going to say that I feel like it's a great first line of defense and going back to self-serve, making things more self-serve. AI can be a very big tool in that because it's sifting through all the work that your team has done to like gather and document everything. And it's just basically the AI is synthesizing those answers. If the customer doesn't get the answer that they want, you do need a human after that to kind of guide them through whatever problem or issue that they're trying to solve. I also think that we also tend to overcomplicate it. Like you think about B2C. I was recently locked out of my Hulu account, and the first thing I did was chat with a bot, and I could tell that I was like chatting with an AI bot, but it was actually helpful in like that I was able to feel like I could get through that first line of defense and then talk to a human. It's almost like if I don't have to talk to a human and the AI can solve it for me, like that's a win for me too. Like I don't necessarily need to talk to a human for it to solve my problem.
She'll say please and thank you to the bot.
I do, and it's like you're welcome. It's very polite back.
Asha, thoughts? I know you have some on this particular topic.
I would say the best investment in terms of tools that leverage AI is really internal, and to make your internal teams more effective, not just efficient, but effective. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of intake of information from your customers, whether it's through support or it's a conversation they're having with sales, with maybe they're participating in a beta with your product management team. And then there's the conversations that they're interacting with your CSM. Synthesizing all that information into a central location and providing insights so that when you're doing internal account reviews, when you're looking at what is the opportunity for expansion, what is the potential for renewal, like synthesizing all of that data, because there is so much, I think is probably the most valuable use of AI out of the gate. And there are other ways of managing that interaction with the customer. And there's so much that's still being developed with AI and the large language models that I wouldn't touch the customer interaction yet as much. Of course, there are the bots and such that you've mentioned, but I would say better investment is make your internal teams more effective for when they need to know the customer and they need to plan and they need to interact with the customer. And that way it appears that everybody knows what they're doing
For
and
sure.
what their needs are.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it a lot so we're going to go down the technology rabbit hole because we're already there, right? So a lot of the CS platforms out there are really adopting AI, right? Churn Zero was the first out of the gate with their AI briefs and super effective. I mean, I was able to see one of their CSMs actually wasn't my CSM at Churn Zero, so I've used multiple platforms, but he took the description of his company of his customer, and he took their latest 10K, loaded it in, and said, "Give me a success plan," and it spit out a success plan. Like legit, there was 100. He had to go back and edit it and make things, readable and more human. But he got there just by putting those two things into AI, and he didn't have to do any work. Building a success plan for anybody who's done it, it's onerous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's enjoyable. Don't get us wrong. That's why I'm in customer success, but it's labor intensive. So being able to just shave all that time off is amazing. So we're already there. So we're going to go down the rabbit hole a little bit here. So the question will be, actually, you know what? Well, let me circle back on this. Are there any other questions in the room where we started with why you should care? Or everybody really wants to go down the technology route. Okay, so I'm going to start with Asha, and the question is, oh, I had one. Sorry.
I think that's an interesting point. Why is the technology where we're starting? Like, what is your take on that? Like, why is that why is that what everybody wants to talk about here? I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, because digital CS, scaled CS is a lot of backed by technology. You can't do a high volume, low touch type program without it. I think I will defer to the panel, but that's my opinion. Go ahead.
There's the why do we care? But I think your question is why is that where we're starting? And I think in terms of for your own organization, I actually don't think that's where you should start. I'll go back to what I said earlier. It's a very important piece that you then you use to fill in on your plan on how you're going to execute. But back when I said this is strategy and function, so when you're sitting with the strategy piece, I believe you should start with what is your customer journey and mapping that out. And I think there's also, if you're a company that's been in existence for a little bit of time, you're not super young. I also think there's a value to mapping out, well, what's the desired journey? And it's a lot of input from your product team, your sales team, your CS team, your marketing team. What does that desired journey look like in terms of, how that product should be working? And then actually doing what's real time, what's happening today in terms of that journey and seeing where the gaps are. That I think is an important first step. And then as you start looking for some of those quick wins, those low-hanging fruit in terms of what you're going to do first, identifying the gaps and then looking at, is this a process issue? Is this an internal training issue? Or is there some technology? And even with technology, I've never been an advocate for let's go buy more technology. Is there technology we already have within the organization that can help address that? Yeah. Or do we need to look at something new?
Do we need to go out and buy?
Right, exactly. So that's I didn't say this earlier, but I was an accountant actually. That was my degree in college. So I always say I'm not the frivolous marketer. But yeah, so I would say that's where you should start from, not starting with technology, but that's what helps you execute.
I think the reason why though, like we talk about technology, so why it's one of the first things we talk about now is because it helps you build the scalable foundation for later. So that's why it does come up earlier than I think it used to. And I know we're getting to that later too, so we don't have to.
Well, we're kind of winding through our questions properly here. So JP, you have a question?
Yeah, it's more of a statement. So
Okay.
I totally agree with Asha's point that everything starts with your goals, your strategy, and so on, and then moves to technology. This room is a little bit maybe self-selecting in that most of us that came here already know that we perceive a value in scale. So it's now, okay, what's the next thing? And that's why the tech is coming up quite a bit, I think.
That's fair.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to go down the technology. So where do you start? And Asha, you brought up a point of looking internally, right? Making sure that you don't already have the tools that you need to do this. Once you've done that, you've realized that doesn't exist. Where do I start? And I'll start with Erica.
So you touched on this earlier, Ash, but I think it all starts with your knowledge management because that's going to be the sort of the key piece that all of these other communication pieces are going to draw on. So what I mean by that, right, is either your externally facing knowledge base for your customers, right, that has all that great information, but there's also usually an internal super secret knowledge base as well. So maybe that's all the, you don't necessarily want to put it in front of customers, but all right, here's a hack that we can put together and we'll keep that in the back end. Or there's other bits of information about how either certain pieces of the product or certain processes work, or how we handle certain accounts that you want to keep within your knowledge base. There's a story I can share around this. At one point, a team that I was running, I realized that 25% of my support team's time was going into answering questions from our sales team. And I was like, holy, when I realized that's a lot. And so then I hired someone to really, like, we had a knowledge base, and, a lot of times it was like, this is early stage startup. Like, I was trying to write this thing and keep it up and have, 30 people reporting to me and all this sort of stuff. So I finally hired someone who had expertise in this area, and holy crap, he made our entire organization that much more efficient.
Yeah.
And the reason why that's so important, right, is that, not like our support team, right? We used Zendesk at the time. We were pulling on our knowledge base, right, to have all of these sort of pretext answers like ready to go, right? Anytime someone had, we also had lots of like customer examples in a library, right? And so instead of the sales team, again, sorry, sales guys, but this is a CS.
This is a CS. We're gonna we'll beat them up a little bit more.
Right.
Don't worry.
Instead of asking us like, oh, what's what are the customers that you have that did this use case? We had a library. Go figure it out. It's here in the library.
Self-serve.
So it's just like both there's internal and external applications. And I do think that knowledge management and almost having a librarian of sorts within your organization is just going to increase in importance in the future.
Asha, you touched on this a little bit with the internal, and there's AI answer that I have for this, but I'm gonna turn it over to you.
I don't know that this is where I would start with, but I was at an organization where we quantified one particular process and its impact on our CSM time, and that's around product feedback. We looked at the amount of time a cross-section of our CSMs were spending in all the activities related to product feedback. So, product feedback is low-hanging fruit when it comes to customer engagement, in my opinion. Every customer wants to tell you how that blue button should really be orange. But it's, what are your processes internally that have been agreed upon with your product management team? How is sales involved in that? And then the amount of time CSMs spend in status, like getting updates from product management on the status of all of those product feedbacks in preparation for status calls, in preparation for back when QBRs happened on a regular basis. And also the amount of time as we grew as an organization to have product management leadership participating in those calls to go through your roadmap. That's just not scalable. And so how do you digitize that workflow in a meaningful way? And that was something where we were able to quantify our CSM's time and knock off 20% of what they did on a weekly basis. It's a huge number.
Yeah.
And it speaks to how much legwork is involved when you don't have the right processes, you don't have the right tools in place. And so that's some place where we invested in tools to make that a more efficient process. And I will say it was a topic of conversation in our customer advisory board where they just wanted more visibility into the product roadmap, and it also addressed a customer need.
Huge.
I'm going to go a slightly different route on where I think a CS organization should start. I'm going to draw a parallel with accountants. One of the big problems accountants face is all their information is in disparate places. They have to go and chase down something from sales for a new contract for revenue. They have to go to their marketing team to figure out what they need to accrue for this month. And it's not in one central place. Which Avise is trying to solve, by the way. But with the CS department as well, I think that a lot of different functions have a dedicated software already. And when I joined Avise, that was definitely true. The sales team had a CRM. The product team had a huge tech stack already. The engineering team had a huge tech stack already. And so when I came in and we were talking about the customer journey, mapping that out, and all the things that I needed to do to succeed in my role, I needed a place where I could consolidate all the information coming out of all of these tools already into one place. And that is where CS platforms, CSP for short, really come into play, because what they're doing is basically creating a source of truth for your customer success department. They're consolidating everything from your CRM. They're taking activities from your product or from whatever other product is tracking those events. They're also a place where you can take customer notes. So it's just almost like a data layering tool, and then you can make really, really data-rich decisions off of that when it's all in one place. So it's not a very like traditional answer, I would say, but I do see like huge value in a CSP to create that source of truth for your customer success strategy and function, especially early on when you have to move really quickly.
Yeah. I think so. If you haven't figured it out, I'm a huge fan of technology. So we consolidating that information. I would agree with Erica on the knowledge base. I love CSPs. I love all that, but I think getting that knowledge in one place is super important. Our engineering team actually started talking to Amazon. Amazon has released Amazon Q. It's part of their Amazon business. And they actually specifically are targeting internal data, right? So to your point, Alex, every department has their own spot, right? Whether it be Salesforce, whether it be Pendo, whether it be Jira, whether it be all of these places, and there's answers in all of that. So having a tool where you can funnel all of that data into and then be able to ask it questions, huge time save, right? Your internal teams can just use that tool to ask it questions, and they're going to get the answers back from every piece within the organization. So this isn't me repping Amazon as the answer, but a tool like that where you can consolidate all that information. There's plenty out there.
I ask a contrarian question because you guys probably know better than I do, but how is that different, or how is a CSP in that context different from like a wiki? Because truth be like, I kind of hate CSPs.
Shame.
At least the ones that I've used. Won't name any names, but I haven't. I mean, most of the use cases that I've used that for are not necessarily for knowledge base. So maybe that is applicable. But I'm wondering about your experiences with them, because clearly there's some fans here.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alex.
It's
we
hard.
I'm going to time check us. We have 7 minutes.
Time flew.
And there might be other questions. So
yeah, I think a knowledge base is still separate. Our knowledge base, we use Notion, and that's where kind of all departments can find the information they need. I think where a CSP sits is it's not like a knowledge base is where if you need to know about what you need to do next, like I guess in terms of if the product isn't working or whatever that might be, it's different than a CSP where you're consolidating. I guess I don't have the right
consolidating
word for it.
customer data.
Yeah, you're consolidating
right?
customer data, exactly.
And being able to trigger off that workflows and health scores and all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah, it's not like the knowledge base of how the product works. It's the customer data that helps you act in a strategic way.
And we can talk about what you've used and your complaints.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now.
No. I mean,
So
I would just
we
say,
have 6 minutes. So I want to get to the questions online or in the room. So do we have any questions in the room? Oh boy.
Just a quick one. You guys, I think one or two of you kind of touched on this, but what I always find when I come in to see it in an organization is the product. When you go, what's wrong? You get a lot of like blank stares. Where are we dropping people in this customer journey? Like I've created a customer journey. Okay, where are you losing them? Nobody's talked about product telemetry. How critical is that?
So the customers behave. So if the product is a SaaS product,
Yeah.
then for a digital scale tech touch function product, your customer's behavior in your product is incredibly important, because that's ultimately what you're going to build your programs, not campaigns, off of, in terms of pushing them along and giving them that next best action. So if you have a SaaS product, either you should be building visibility into what your customer's behavior is into that product, or you need to be using some in-app messaging capability, because that's going to be very important.
Yeah, I just felt the same way. I feel like
Yeah.
that's one of the first things that I look at in an organization.
For products, Pendo, Churn Zero actually can do this. App queues, WalkMe.
Mhm.
Yep, Gainsight with PX.
Yeah.
Good question. Any other questions in the room? Rob?
So, Alistair, you piqued my curiosity when you said 2030 is a world where customer success is entirely AI driven.
That's not what I said. It's 100% not what I said.
You added the year.
I am
in
happy
there.
to send you. I'm happy to send you the YouTube with me debating this. It's not what I said.
Okay, but I'm just wondering, what does that even look like hypothetically? That's a question for anybody, but Alistair, I guess you've given it the most thought. So
Yeah, I mean it's efficiency, right? So if somebody tells me that it's 50%, it's the fact that I didn't have to go hire the heads, right? My CFO is coming to me saying, well, how much more headcount do you need over the next 5 years? I can say, I need half of it, because I now have AI in place and I can leverage the AI to do it. So it's not taking away, it's the efficiency gain and the ability, the budget savings that I get by not having to go hire 3 more FTEs.
so it's not that you need zero, like in perpetuity, hypothetically.
No, CS doesn't go away, period. Yeah.
I
would
think with
also add that,
enterprise,
like, I think it depends a lot on the type of customer and software. So,
100%.
At the low end, right? Sort of high volume, low ARR, absolutely. Further up you go, the more likely it is there's going to be some relationship stuff in there, and stuff that you're going to need a human for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would 100% agree. And that sort of talk, we didn't get to segmentation,
Yeah.
but I know you were about to go there with the enterprise. This is where having those tools in place helps everybody, right? Your lowest segment doesn't get anything. They get the help center, they get the training portal, and they might get a chatbot. As you move up the stack, you have to have that. Yeah, this will be,
Hi.
unless it's quick, it'll be our final question.
Yeah, it might be quick. Yeah, the question I have is about, let's say, customer service as the call center as a part of customer success. One of the big problems that I face with customer support is lack of kind of escalation or ability to make decisions. So AI doesn't necessarily help with that. It's much more of an operational problem that the person you talk to cannot give you what you need from that person. And Amazon is the one that kind of popularized attention to escalation is not a bad thing, right? Just decision makers, blah, blah, blah. So what is your take? Like, how can AI, I guess, be empowered operationally to provide to provide ability to make a decision?
Yeah,
I think at the end of the day, that's not something that I have like direct experience with, but at the end of the day, what AI is doing is reading a data model to then be able to know how to react to it. So you just have to have like a formula, an ideal formula on how you want that AI tool to how you want it to respond to it. Because basically the AI is trained off of that data model. So I just don't think tools have gotten there where there's one consistent escalation process that they can then use to apply to that organization.
And I know we're at time, so we're losing our online folks, but the decision tree is not there yet.
Yeah.
It's just not. And so you have to have a human involved. My experience with Xfinity over the last 2 months has been a nightmare. And you have to use their chatbot to talk. And it took me probably 15 minutes of telling the chatbot to get to an agent for me to actually talk to a human over the chat. So it's not there yet. And it will get there. I know it will, but it's going to be a while. So with that, thank you, everybody. We're sticking around. So if you want to ask questions, please feel free.
What a panel. I love that. It was like almost 20 minutes left and I thought it just started. So thank you so much. It was very interesting. And thank you again, everyone, for coming out. We are having a closing party today and startup showcase at 5 p.m. here in Suffolk University at first floor. So make sure you attend that. Speaking of AI, we have Kevin Thai, who is our photographer this year, and